All right, welcome back to another Explainer. Today we are looking at a really fascinating historical analysis of one of the most famous figures in all of human history, Emperor Ashoka. Now, when most people hear his name, they immediately picture a vast ancient empire and, well, a pretty ruthless conqueror. But our sources paint a much richer picture than that. We're going to explore Ashoka not just as a military leader, but as a monumental social and economic reformer who engineered policies that were wildly ahead of his time. I mean, he completely transformed the daily lives of his citizens, and today we're going to break down exactly how he pulled that off.
Okay, here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll do an introduction and set up our main question. Second, we'll look at society and lifestyle. Third, economy and trade. Fourth, religion and the Dhamma policy. And finally, we'll wrap up with a conclusion and your key takeaways.
Section 1. Introduction and Main Question.
So what was life actually like for the common people living under Emperor Ashoka's rule? You know, it's incredibly easy to look at history from the top down, focusing strictly on the giant palaces, the shifting borders, and the big wars. But to genuinely understand Ashoka's legacy, we have to look at the grassroots level. We really need to examine the everyday economy, the baseline structure of society, and the personal beliefs of the citizens to see the real, tangible impact of his reforms on everyday life.
Moving right along to Section 2, Society and Lifestyle.
So, society under Ashoka was, as you might expect, highly structured. The baseline of everyday life was heavily influenced by the Varna system, which basically means society was organized into very distinct social groups. In this era, your daily existence, your social standing, and your overall identity were inextricably tied to your occupation and, of course, your family traditions. The family unit was absolutely the anchor. It dictated social traditions, daily routines, and pretty much everything about how a person navigated their world.
Now, think about most ancient emperors for a second. They were usually perfectly happy as long as the taxes were paid on time and the laws were generally followed. But Ashoka's primary social goal went so far beyond basic governance. His true objective, what he really cared about, was elevating the ethical standards of his people. He actively engineered a society based on moral conduct, deep tolerance, and mutual respect. He didn't just want a functioning, wealthy empire, he wanted a moral and harmonious one. And honestly, for an ancient ruler, that is a massive shift in priorities.
But this brings us to a really crucial question. Were Ashoka's reforms limited strictly to the social lives and the morals of his citizens? Absolutely not. To maintain an empire of this massive scale, you need a seriously robust financial engine to keep things running. And as it turns out, Ashoka was an absolute master of economic management as well.
Which takes us right into Section 3, Economy and Trade.
Ashoka's economy basically ran on dual engines. On one side, agriculture was the absolute foundation. It was the primary driver of state income and the bedrock of the empire's wealth. But importantly, it didn't operate in isolation. Right alongside it was a thriving, incredibly multifaceted trade sector filled with specialized crafts, various professions, and bustling industry. Both of these engines, agriculture and trade, were absolutely critical to keeping the state treasury full and sustaining what was a truly massive population.
And Ashoka knew that a strong economy requires strong infrastructure. You can't have one without the other. So the state actively sponsored extensive road networks to accelerate transportation and make moving goods easier. But what's really cool is that they also thought about the human element of commerce. They built accommodations, rest houses, and sanctuaries specifically designed for the comfort of travelers and merchants. Essentially, Ashoka was building the ancient equivalent of highway rest stops. By making travel safer and quite a bit more comfortable, he supercharged the trade networks across his entire empire.
Let's pivot to Section 4, Religion and the Dhamma policy.
Okay, here is a super vital distinction to keep in mind. In his own personal life, Ashoka was deeply influenced by Buddhism. However, as an emperor, his governance was built strictly on a foundation of religious tolerance. He flat out refused to use the immense power of the state to exclusively promote one single religion. Instead, his official, overarching policy championed nonviolence, compassion, and absolute equal respect for all faiths and belief systems across the board.
This state policy of tolerance was codified into what is famously known as the Dhamma. But what exactly is it? Well, it wasn't some strict religious doctrine, and it wasn't a rigid set of worship rituals that everyone had to follow. Rather, it was a broad, ethical, and philosophical framework. It emphasized nonviolence, compassion, and mutual respect. Basically, it was a universal code of conduct designed to unite vastly different groups of people under one shared moral umbrella. Let's do a quick thought experiment here. Just imagine you are governing a vast, sprawling empire. It's filled with literally millions of people, they're speaking multiple different languages, and they are practicing wildly diverse religions. If you sit on the throne and insist that only your personal religion is correct, and you show zero respect for the beliefs of everyone else, what happens? I mean, chaos, societal conflict, and open rebellion are practically guaranteed. By mandating mutual respect, Ashoka actively prevented that kind of conflict and bought his empire remarkable stability.
So how did this massive philosophy actually look in everyday life? Well, Ashoka integrated Dhamma through really practical, everyday rules that anyone could grasp. The core tenets included things like respecting your parents and your elders, practicing kindness toward all living creatures, yes, including animals, maintaining truthfulness, and just generally upholding moral conduct. He took this high-minded, lofty philosophy and turned it into everyday actions that common people could easily understand and, more importantly, actually follow in their daily lives.
And that brings us to Section 5, Conclusion and Key Points. If you are prepping for an exam on this era, here is your rapid-fire checklist of the major themes you absolutely need to master. Number 1, the social structure, which definitely includes understanding the Varna system. 2, the dual economic engines we talked about, agriculture and trade. 3, the nuances of the Dhamma policy and Ashoka's approach to religious tolerance. And finally, definitely don't forget the specific advancements in art, crafts, education, and literature that flourished during this period. Seriously, keep this mental framework handy for your studies, it's gonna help a lot.
That wraps up today's analysis. But before we go, I want to leave you with a final provocative thought. We just analyzed a ruler from ancient history, right? But look around at our world today. How could Ashoka's ancient state-sponsored policies of tolerance, ethical conduct, and mutual respect apply to the conflicts happening right now in our own modern, incredibly diverse societies? Is it possible that a broad framework like Dhamma is exactly what modern governance is missing today? Think about that. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.